How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another stream. So, as pointed out previously, my lighting setup has gotten a lot better, so the quality has got a lot better, and in the future, it's actually going to get better again, because we're going to be upgrading the camera equipment just because I can. So, unfortunately, you are going to see my sunburned face. You are going to see spots and other nasties, and you're just going to have to live with it. Oh well, I apologize for that. It was mainly Julius that had that issue, but there you go. All right, who have we got today? We've got Vince, welcome back, mate. We've got Vinya Krishna. We've got Elena, welcome for the first time. I don't think, you can't hear me anyway because you're silent. You've got your headphone turned off. Now you can. Welcome, Elena, now that you've undeafened yourself. And Dan B, welcome back again. Quality and sound is great. Are you on SMB7? I don't know what an SMB7 is. Let me have a look at what an SMB... No, I think is the answer. High-end... Oh, and I am on a Rode NT USB. You can see that just there. So it is a sort of prosumer grade studio mic, I guess. I think they are used in studios. It's got a pop shield. I've had this for years now, actually. I've had this for years. So that does explain why the quality of the sound is good. We also use what's it bloody called? NVIDIA Broadcast as well. So NVIDIA Broadcast then strips out background noise and stuff like that, and that's sort of kept at about 30%. And then the gain within Windows on the microphones at about 80%, I think. So it generally keeps the volume fairly nice and the audio fairly clean. And then Sony a6000 on the camera and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's all good. Fun and games, but we are here today for another stream for the DevOps Lounge. Welcome everyone, October 24th. Is the time flying by or is that just me? Does seem like it's flying by. It's pretty consistent, but it still seems as though it's just flying by. Megalomaniac, welcome. Keeson, welcome back. We got a new unread down here. Just make sure it's not something I need to miss. No, we're all good. So remember, everyone, the questions channel is there. If you need to ask any questions or you just want to say hello, that's fine too. If you just want to say hello. If like Julius or Julio and you can't be here today and you need to go and sleep, that is also fine. Not a problem. Thanks everyone for showing up. All right, let's get on with it then. So Sundays, cloud news, and we look at some articles. Now, I actually went over some Azure stuff. So I tend to do this in the morning. So I give as maximum amount of time as possible for the cloud providers to release information and put out news articles and so on and so forth. And so I try and give them as much time as I can so that they can get the news out there. So I do it in the morning, and honestly, there was just hardly anything for Azure. There was virtually nothing for GCP that was even worth mentioning. And it's mainly AWS that I have updates for today. So I've got one, what's that one? I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4. Normally I do about 5 updates per cloud provider. So we've got 5 for AWS. I could probably just keep going forever on that front, but obviously you've got to draw the line somewhere. And then we've got we'll just sort of look at the Azure changelog, sort of the news site. And then we'll move straight over to Hacking News and start looking at some interesting articles that I've spotted on there. But overall, it's a little bit sparse today. So we might actually, hopefully people have got questions, things that they want answering, and we start looking at that kind of stuff. We should also be live over on YouTube as well. So if YouTube is your preferred platform, you can go over to YouTube Live, and I've got the chat up there as well. So I'll be able to see if you want to ask questions via that as well. So that's all good. All right, let's jump in. This should all be working. There we go. Alrighty, so the first thing is AWS Fault Injection Simulator now supports spot interrupts. So does everyone know what AWS Fault Injection Simulator is? It's actually really, really cool. It's essentially AWS's chaos engineering functionality, and it allows you, trying to get straight with the camera here. I feel like this has been moved a little bit. It allows you to essentially do some chaos engineering. So it's like a managed chaos monkey. Effectively, if you don't know what, let's have a look. Let's have a look what Chaos Monkey is. So Chaos Monkey is very, very famous. It was created by Netflix, I believe, and it's used for going into a system, going into a network and just yanking cables out and disconnecting drives and shutting services off. And it enables you to try and work out whether or not you can actually withstand an outage. That's what it's about. It's, can you withstand an outage should one occur? Are you resilient? Are you multi-AZ? And that's why I remember reading about this ages ago. And I remember when I read about it, it was kind of funny. I went home and I was actually on Netflix at home on the remote control, and the search function didn't work. I started having problems, and I thought maybe it's my local client. But then it made me realize that actually Netflix it uses a microservice architecture, and it's so sort of well architected that the search functionality can completely go down, but I was still able to stream something. I was still able to navigate my home screen and see things. And the streaming can technically stop working, but the search functionality can still remain working. So you can search for stuff, but you just can't stream it, and so on and so forth. So it's because of things like Chaos Monkey and the general high-level concept of chaos engineering that they're able to build these kind of systems, because they can have something go through and sort of randomly generate as sort of simulate a random event as possible in order to then go, oh, we didn't foresee that if that particular service went down, everything would go down, or if that service fails or is turned on and off again, that other services that relied on it couldn't handle it flipping. They just can't handle it flipping, so we need to make every other service be able to handle this one. You also discover things like, oh, that's a tight dependency. That's actually much more tightly coupled service than we realized. Maybe that functionality should be taken out and moved into each service individually. So chaos engineering overall is a great way of testing for resilience within your applications and your infrastructure and just your general overarching sort of architecture. So Chaos Monkey is one of them. And I would say that AWS Fault Injection Simulator is pretty much Chaos Monkey, managed Chaos Monkey. I don't think it's Chaos Monkey in the background, because when you actually look at it, and I did actually bring it up here because I did want to sort of look at it. Have I got it? Fault Injection Simulator. That's the actual service there. But if you look at the manual, it doesn't actually really support all that much. Whereas I think Chaos Monkey actually supports a lot of things out the box. So I think they've written this in the background. But you can do things like, so Amazon EC2, you can do spot instance interruptions, which is what that update was about. You can do a reboot, you can do a stop, and you can do a terminate. So you can literally completely reboot an EC2 instance, and then you can see how your applications respond to that. That EC2 instance might have a database running on it, or a caching layer. You might have a database and then a caching layer, and then your application. And then if that then takes the caching layer down, does your application respond? Can it go, I can't speak to the cache, so I'll just go straight to the database. So that then enables you to test whether or not your application is actually resilient, and so on and so forth. And it can do other things as well, EKS, so it can destroy entire node groups. And it works on a percentage as well. With RDS, it can do a failover or reboot a cluster or an instance, and then system manager actions, so send commands and automation execution. So it's a little, I would say as a service, it's a little sort of thin on the ground at the moment, but it's still a great way of introducing chaos engineering into your AWS environment. So I was really, really pleased to see that they're still improving on that. So that's pretty cool. The next one was, does anyone have any questions on that at all? Not seeing anything. No, okay, that's fine. Amazon Connect launches API to configure hours of operation programmatically. So Amazon Connect now provides an API to programmatically create and manage hours of operation. Using this API, you can programmatically configure hours of operation, which can be used to contact flows to decide which queue to route contacts to. Additionally, you can now delete hours of operation that no longer require using the delete API. So this is Amazon Connect. So when you're connecting people coming in and you're connecting them to various connection endpoints, so people to speak to, this can now do hours of operation. So you can be like, we're open here, we're open then. If you call at this time, you go here. If you do it this time, you can do it. And you can now do that via the API, whereas you couldn't do that previously. So that's something that, because there's now an API for it, will trickle down into something like Terraform. So someone will update the AWS provider, and that will trickle on down. D, welcome. Just saw you pop in there into the chat. What else have we got? Still got Vince, everyone. Yeah, cool. On Horizon, welcome again, Horizon. Woo! Welcome back. So that's pretty cool. Another good update there. Amazon RDS Proxy now supports Amazon RDS for MySQL version 8.0. Now let's have a look at Amazon Proxy for those who haven't done it before. So make your applications both scalable, resilient, and secure. Amazon RDS Proxy is a fully managed, highly available database proxy for Amazon RDS that makes applications more scalable, more resilient to database failures, and more secure. Excellent. And it now supports MySQL version 8. Apparently there's a nice little video. Improved application performance. RDS Proxy instance maintains a pool of established connections to your RDS database instances, reducing the stress on database compute and memory resources that typically occurs when your connections are established. So it's basically sort of like network level, sort of hardware level connection pooling. So you would normally do that inside of the software itself, where you would create a pool, and then whenever you're sending queries from your software, your ORM or your database connection library, your database library will handle connection pooling for you, and it'll pick the right connection to speak to the database over, and it might establish 3, 4, 5 connections to the database simultaneously, and then it will then use one to do that for you. Whereas this is doing that multi-homed connection to RDS for you, and then your application can just speak to the proxy, and the proxy takes care of that for you. It also makes it more highly available as well, because the proxy can then see which instances are live and which aren't. So if you have a multi-AZ RDS instance, the proxy is looking around to see what's going on there, and so that can direct back and forwards as well. Jexel, welcome. So you pop in there, sneaky popping in at the last minute. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Announcing the general availability of the AWS Panorama Appliance. So this is I believe this is like a security. Oh no, computer vision. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of something else then. Improve your operations with computer vision edge. Wow, cool. Add computer vision to your existing fleet of cameras with the AWS Panorama Appliance, which integrates seamlessly with you. You know what I was thinking of? Palo Alto have a Panorama, I think, and it lets you manage multiple PAs, I think. Make predictions locally with high accuracy and low latency from a single management interface where you can analyze video feeds in milliseconds, process video feeds at the edge, enabling you to control where your data is stored and operate with limited internet bandwidth. That's really, really cool. I like that. That's really cool indeed, how it works. So I like these diagrams. They don't have to produce some really nice data. I'm in the way of one part of it, but that's okay. So machine learning models, bring your custom CV models, such as those built with Amazon SageMaker, or I'm using that at the moment. Actually, I'm working on that at the moment for my client. Or use models from AWS or third-party application providers. Connect and register Panorama Appliance or AWS Panorama-enabled devices and combine ML models and business logic to create AWS Panorama applications. That's pretty cool. That's really, really cool. I might have to look at that. We're hopefully moving into a new office soon. And I'm thinking that I might go with... We're definitely going to put cameras in there. And this now makes me think whether or not AWS Panorama-enabled cameras are a thing. Has anyone ever done that? Let's have a look to see what cameras there actually are. Supported computer vision models and cameras. Let's have a look. Okay, so there's not too many, but there's a fair amount. Okay, X's. I've not actually heard of any of these manufacturers. Anyone else heard of these manufacturers? I haven't. But, wow, look at that. Woo. I like the way the demonstration is like, look, you can buy these multi-kit, and then in the background is like these multi-million-dollar houses. Okay, home security, yeah. Commercial security, business security. So IP, power over Ethernet camera. Wow, very cool. So you can basically plug one of these then over into Panorama, and that will give you the ability to use machine learning to do image analysis. Ah, nice stuff. 4K PoA IP systems. Look at the size of that. Jeez, that's quite an array. I think we'll probably need like 2, maybe 3 cameras at most. Who else has popped in? We've gone up in numbers. Kiam Nyungyan Duk, welcome. Proton, welcome back. Excellent. More and more people. Welcome to the stream. All right, let's have a look. Pretty cool. That's really cool. I've not heard of these manufacturers, though. I think I've maybe heard of these, but I'm not really overly sure, to be honest with you. But I mean, I really liking the idea that they can just plug straight into a fixed dome cameras, modular cameras, panoramic cam, thermal, specialty cameras, Canon network cameras. Let's look what specialty cameras are. Oh, why is it specialty? Do you need to build a network video solution that requires more than what standard network cameras offer? Perhaps elegant, discrete camera. Psychiatric wards or correction facilities. Well, I probably should be in a psychiatric ward, but I don't want to build one. Network camera series. Okay, very cool. Well, I think that that's really awesome. And I think that we're maybe overkill for what I'm going to need for the new office, but I really, really think that that looks super, super cool. RDS Pro. Oh, that's RDS Proxy. It's the wrong one. Blip. Panorama. Yeah, okay. Your existing IP cameras, Panorama Appliance. Set up a minute, connect cameras and process multiple CV. I wonder if you can connect non-Panorama cameras directly. That looks like you set up a Panorama Appliance and your cameras just go into it. That just says your existing IP cameras. And then it says AWS Panorama enabled devices on the bottom there. So obviously you can use an appliance to plug existing ones into it, or you can use an existing one. Process multiple CV applications, okay, and then application, what's this, on-prem? So that's on-premise. So then you can do route AWS Panorama application results to AWS services such as S3 or CloudWatch. Integrate Panorama Appliance results on-premise line of business applications for automation. That's pretty cool. That's really, really cool, actually. Yeah, you could generate heat maps of customer foot traffic to uncover insights about your store layout and product placement. Wow, that's really powerful. Sort of scary as well at the same time. Okay, let's see what Elena said. Hey, Elena, I just migrated from managed database to having database in K8. What are the main things I need to worry about for production? I make backups to object storage every 24 hours, but I feel fragile. Yeah, I know what you mean. I personally would move. I mean, I know you've probably done a lot of work to get into K8. Personally, myself, I would move it out of K8 and I would use RDS. Just primarily because databases are like, ultimately the database is pretty important, right? It's containing your application data, it's containing your customer data, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty important that that data is protected. The database is up and running 24/7, because without that database, very likely your application isn't going to be able to offer any functionality to end users. So I would probably move it back out of K8 and move it into RDS, even though there is obviously cost associated with that, just because you can get a multi-AZ automatic failover. We've just looked at RDS Proxy, so you can get benefits of doing that. Whereas if you have it in K8, well, unless the database is sort of like Kubernetes native and can operate in a sense of like the data can be distributed somehow across multiple sort of persistent volumes across a network storage that's replicated really, really well, and then any node on the network can run a database pod that your application can talk to via a service in order to enable it to talk to the database. And then if a pod goes down, or even a node group goes down, it just continues to work. Unless you have that, I would say that you should probably move to something managed like RDS. I can see Ninja's typing. Ninja's a bit of a K8 expert. He is the K8 expert for us, basically. So he will probably have a better idea than me, but let's see what he says. But it's a good question, Elena. It's a really good question. It's good that you're thinking in that way. It's really good that you're thinking in that way. 24-hour backups. Another thing you can do when you say you're doing those backups, are you doing a raw backup of the actual raw database files from disk, or are you doing like a SQL dump? The problem with a SQL dump is it eventually gets to the point where the SQL dump itself becomes really, really excessively large as your database grows. And so that almost it becomes difficult over time. So if MySQL, Vince is saying, Vitus.io, we're going to check that out now. And then Ninja, who has experience with this stuff at extremely large scale, saying database K8 is not ideal. The storage controls are not going to give you the same reliability as a regular file system or database due to how K8 schedules pods and workloads. I would recommend not running databases in K8, and this is general consensus from the K8 community. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that advice. We're looking at now this thing called Vitus.io from Vince. Thanks very much, Vince. A database clustering system for horizontal scaling of MySQL, and it's got a Kubernetes quick start. So if MySQL is a database that you can use, it is possible that this is what you need. Vitus combines many important MySQL features with the scalability of a NoSQL database. Its built-in sharding features let you grow your database without adding sharding logic to your application. Okay. MySQL doesn't natively support sharding, but you will likely need it as your database grows. Vitus saves you from having to add sharding logic to your app and also enables live resharding with minimal read-only downtime. What about write? Performance. Vitus automatically rewrites queries that hurt database performance. Interesting. Okay. It also uses caching mechanisms to mediate queries and prevent duplicate queries from simultaneously reaching your database. Performance is monitored through nightly benchmark. Wow, that's pretty good. Connection pooling. Vitus eliminates the high memory overhead of MySQL connections. Vitus servers easily handle thousands of connections at once. That's really, really cool. That might be the option. Elena, but Ninja keeps saying KS was not really well designed for stateful applications. It can do it, but it's very much prone to issues. Yeah, so you're using Bitnami's K8's Helm package. I use Velero to back up the persistent storage, volume, and claim. Yeah, okay. I would probably do that, and depending on the size of the database, I would probably go with probably a SQL dump as well. So you've just got the raw SQL. I would encrypt it, and then I'd stick that in S3 as well, just to be on the safe side. Making backs is only good if you can restore them. It sounds to me, Elena, like it might be more work to get this going versus the benefits. I think I would probably just look at running it on RDS if you can afford to do so. I can see. Are you using K8 for the database because it's a cost issue? Because obviously, if you've already got a K8 cluster, you want to reuse that as much as you can, right? Which I can totally appreciate. But I would say that maybe stick it. I would probably stick with RDS just to be on the safe side. But yeah, I agree with Ninja there. K8 was never really designed for stateful applications. Its primary aim and function is for stateless applications. So your application is talking over the network to something else that is maintaining state for you, caching, databases, whatever, S3, etc. Whereas when you put a stateful application in K8, then you are risking the integrity of that data. So yeah, well, that's got quite a conversation going. We've got multiple people chatting now. Elena's still typing away. Let's move on to the other one that I saw. That looks really good, Vince. That Vitus looks really good indeed. That was Panorama. And then we've got introducing support for AWS KMS customer managed keys for encrypting artifacts by Amazon CloudWatch Synthetics. So I brought this up because CloudWatch Synthetics is not something I've used very often, and I don't remember what it is. To use canaries, configurable scripts that run on schedule to monitor your endpoints and APIs. Canaries follow the same route and perform the same actions as a customer, which makes it possible for you to continually verify your customer experience even when you don't have customer traffic on your applications. Okay, that's really nice. Let me just go back a second. Now in preview. Allows you to monitor your endpoints more easily. It's a new feature. Cloud now collects canary traffic, which continuously verify. Yeah, okay. Cloud Synthetics runs tests on your endpoint every minute, 24/7, and alert you when your application endpoints don't behave as expected. That's really cool. That is essentially continuous. That is basically continuous behavior-driven tests. That's really nice. Really nice indeed. Let's have a look. Ninja continuing the conversation here on the backups. We've got K8 has gotten better about this, but you should really know the conditions of the ecosystem that can cause failures before you commit to putting a production database inside of it being Kubernetes. Yeah, I totally agree, guys. I think that it's very clear that it's not really ideal. Elena's looks like elaborating a little bit. I did a test restore and it worked. Previously, I used managed database by dissolution. The cost wasn't an issue, but I wanted to think long term and do it myself. But maybe I don't understand how much work this involves. I think it's not even. I think it's good, Elena, wanting to know how stuff works. I think that that's really, really important. But what I would say is get to know how it works by just setting it up locally in Docker and having to play around. But I wouldn't, for a production grade solution, I would definitely use especially when it comes to the database, I would use as much managed service as I possibly could. Definitely, without a doubt. Just take away that burden, hand it over to someone else, because databases are just really, really difficult to get right. So DevOps says, not sure why you say that when you can run pods with persistent EBS in AWS or comparable in other cloud storage, which is the same performance as EC2. Ninja rebuttal, performance is only one aspect. I'm talking about reliability. When you have an EBS volume on an EC2 instance, it's very straightforward. EBS volume on K8 has lots of layers and failure components to recognize. I would say Ninja's spot on there. I would argue that it is far more difficult to get this right inside of a Kubernetes cluster than it is just on a straight EC2 instance. Well, that's my thoughts on it. I'm going to go back to this, Cloud Synthetics. This looks really, really cool. This looks really, really cool. Cool documentation. Okay, for pricing. Let's have a look at the pricing of it, and let's have a look at the about on it. So essentially then we can do canaries are scripts written in Node.js or Python. They create Lambda functions in your account that use Node.js, Python as a framework. Canaries work over both HTTP and HTTPS protocol. That's really, really cool. You're welcome, Elena, not a problem. I think the main advice came from everyone else. I just sort of supported what they were saying, really. Proton says the main question is why database infrastructure must be unchanged as possible. Using such dynamic environment cases is unnecessary. Well, look, we're having this conversation now by the looks of it. So how do I'm trying to think how I can get Discord up in here now. I probably actually can, to be perfectly honest with you. I can probably go... I don't think that'll see the Discord. Discord, there it is. There's a Discord live. Look at this. Woo, we're going live, baby. How do I... All right, let's grow the window a little bit. Well, let's get this conversation going then, shall we? Seeing as it seems to be a very important one for everyone. All right, let's have a look. Let's see what people are saying. You can see me. I'm doubled up, but there's nothing really I can do about that, I don't think. Well, is that share your screen, turn off the camera. That'll just take me back to the thingy. All right. Thanks for your advice. No pods, PB, PVC, scheduling, CSI. Vince says the manage route. See what happens if I highlight that. You can see that. Yeah, okay. The manage route will save you a ton of headaches. I have several Progress MySQL geo failures implemented, but I do get paid to maintain them. Ninja says not at all the same comparison. You also have Kubelet and the API objects themselves. Yes, indeed. Immutable services have serious advantages over regular VMs. Yeah, that's very true. Yes, managed is usually the way to go unless you need something that managed DBS services don't do. Yeah, like a good one of that is like Oracle, for example. So Oracle, as much as horrible as it is as a framework, as a database engine, will let you can actually write Java that goes into the engine, and you can just augment the engine with Java functions. And then you can do that inside of the Oracle database, and you can literally just augment the functionality inside of it. I think you can even create your own SQL inside of it. So, but that's not supported inside of RDS. Well, because Ninja and DevOps Dude aren't actually in the stream, they're not actually listening, unless they're on YouTube Live. I don't know whether they're actually hearing what I'm saying, so that's fine. But overall, I think that putting a database on Kubernetes is probably not the best idea, in my opinion. I'm really loving this. You know what I need to do? I'm going to duplicate this. Just me and Discord. We're going to do a bit of live editing. Boom, just me and Discord. I'm going to move me over like that. I'm going to be a bit bigger. That means you're going to see spots. Sorry, guys. You're just going to see spots. There's just nothing I can do about it. It's your own fault, really. It's your own fault. It's not my fault, it's your fault. I'll snap that there. I'll pop that there. Then I can bring this here. And then I think I can make that bigger. We'll get that to snap there like that. And I'll just slide myself over like that. How's that? Looking good? That's pretty cool, actually. I can switch to that manual I need to, and then I can go back to this one. And then I can get... no! The wrong one. I can pop that off. And then there's me being incredibly handsome, as usual. All right, well, this conversation's still going. Megalomaniac, I have a microservices application written out that is containerized for online food ordering for individual restaurants. Plan to use AWS EC2, ECS, EC2 based. Any reason I should consider Fargate or EKS? I believe EKS will work out too expensive. I think ECS is cheaper. I think overall it is a cheaper solution, but you're not doing Kubernetes. ECS, I believe, is Amazon's customized container engine underneath, which is fine if you're happy with it and it works and you think it's going to have long-term maintainability and Amazon are going to maintain it in the long term. But if you need to be able to move around and you want to move to another cloud provider, you want to be multi-cloud, multi-tenanted, so on and so forth, it might be better to look at EKS, even if it is more expensive. DevOps 2 says, because you don't want to be in the business of managing VMs. I'm not entirely sure you have to manage VMs in ECS. I think it will do it for you to a degree, but I'm not really too sure. Autoscaling is a good point, but I think again, it could probably do that. Probably do it for. It's not the case. Don't use. If that's not the case, don't use Fargate. Yeah, Fargate is pretty good. I would probably just go with straight EKS though, just so you've got more control over everything. This is a pretty fascinating conversation, actually. I like it. Slightly off topic. Jexel says slightly off topic, but is it worth to run RDS instances for temporary application environments, something like GitLab's preview environments to maintain as similar as configured as possible to production? Or is it worth trying to run Postgres and K8 to save money for easy management since it's not production? I think I personally would go with running K8, running Postgres in K8 as a container if it's not for production and you're happy to potentially lose the data. That's the way I would look at that, Jexel, is if you're happy you've got to look at the sort of the importance of the integrity of the data, right? Can you afford to lose the data? If the answer is yes, then I guess it doesn't really matter, does it? Like if you can just spin up that container on K8 instantly without having to think about it, you just boom, and you've got K8 up and running, and you just go boom, and you've got Postgres up and running. It's got non-prod data in there, and then the pod dies, and you lose everything. And you're like, okay, and you press a button, then it comes back again. Then it's not an issue. But of course, it's entirely based on the actual data itself. But yeah, your environments ideally should run the same stacks and versions. DevOps 2 said you should run non-prod environments the same as prod. You can get into a lot of troubles if you don't. Yeah, they should be run identically from an orchestration perspective and in terms of versions, etc. But I guess the question is that I think, Jexel, I think you're trying to say regarding data integrity, aren't you? I think is what you're saying there. You're essentially saying, if it's not in production, can I use K8 knowing the risks involved, or should I also use RDS? As I think is what you're trying to say there. So I would say that you're probably more than welcome to use K8 for that. It's up to you to decide whether the loss of data is appropriate or not. I guess only you can really decide that. Yeah. I mean, we can't really answer that for you. I would say that the speed, deployment speed, and the benefits of running it on K8s could be worth it if the data is not that important, or you're happy to lose that data, because you spin it up, you spin it down, and you already have a cluster that you're paying for, and it doesn't cost you anything extra in order to spin it up, unless you're using something like Fargate, and then when you spin it up, it results in an EC2, a new node group spinning up, or a new instance in a node group spinning up to accommodate that pod. Unless something like that happens, then it shouldn't cost you anymore. How important is the data, Jexel? How important would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is the data, and can you afford to lose it? Can you afford to lose it, baby? That's the thing, you see. Okay, one example. Your devs build in vanilla MySQL, but prod is in CloudSQL. I'm going to type, I think, because you're not on the stream. Ninja handouts, dude. Doubling up a bit. But I think Excel is asking about data integrity, not the importance. Not importance of dev versus prod in terms of version and software alignment. All right, I tend to sit like this, so I'm just going to move that over a little bit. There we go. Cool. Very much can't afford to lose it. The only problem I can foresee is configuration differences between RDS and Postgres. RDS and Postgres Helm charts. Yeah. Interesting. Don't waste DevOps time. I guess. I've almost hidden the actual YouTube live thing, so I'm not going to see people chatting there. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Well, that's cool. I'm going to let you guys get on with that, and I'm going to go back to using synthetic monitoring. Is that the last item? No, we got Prog. Yes, it is the last item, actually. Yeah, this synthetic monitoring is a very, very cool idea. I really like this idea of just having something constantly go on the customer journey and constantly test the customer journey over and over and over for you so that you can get an idea of when that goes down much, much quicker. Super, super cool. Let's have a look. I just gave one concrete example why you don't want to do things differently between environments. Yeah, I think you did give it I mean, I don't know if we're crossing wires now, but again, it's got nothing to do with whether the versions are in alignment. I mean, you can easily just put them in alignment. I don't think Jaxel is failing to understand that point. I think what he's saying is the data in non-prod isn't as important as the data in prod. So therefore, can I put the data that's in non-prod on a Postgres-based Kubernetes executed instance versus RDS, which immediately starts costing money, whereas the container, the pod in his Kubernetes cluster, which already exists, will not contain money. And he said it's a 3 out of 10 in terms of importance, and therefore he can afford to lose the data. And so I would say you could probably just run that in K8 because it will come up quickly. You can make it match prod if you need it to, but it doesn't sound like it's actually for what you think it's for. As described in the problem, I think is it's for GitLab's preview environments, maintain similar configuration possible. I think you should keep them aligned as closely as you can, but given that the data isn't that important, I think the question here is can it therefore go into K8 for dev and stay in RDS for production? And I would argue that I don't see a problem with it going into K8 for dev, provided that it's compatible. Well, what happens if you use specific triggers that exist on local Postgres that then find out don't exist in prod, and then you have a bunch of time and engine if it's not about data, it's about compatibility and structure? I worded my question poorly. Okay, so a bunch of triggers that don't exist in prod because they're based on RDS, but you're running. Well, I mean, the thing to do there is to just look at what's supported and what isn't supported. You go RDS PostgreSQL, and then you look at what features are supported and what aren't supported, and then you decide whether or not it's a suitable. Is it a suitable solution? No, not necessarily, Ninja. You can run the same versions of Oracle, but there are things of an RDS you can do that you can't. There are things that you can do with on-prem Oracle that you can't do with Oracle in RDS. Customized Java injection wasn't available in RDS a few years ago. It might not still be available. And so the RDS, the RDS equivalent might not actually do what you can do with an on-prem Postgres installation. Don't forget, it's a managed service, and so there are certain things that they can't. Like for example, in RDS Oracle, you couldn't do certain root level changes because it would allow you to break outside of the RDS container and start walking around RDS. And so they didn't want you to do that. Said, well, we can offer you managed Oracle, but it's going to be locked down. And so the Postgres could be the same, or they could be absolutely identical. And if you're running 9.3 or 9.4 or 9.10 or 9 whatever in RDS, and it has all functionality with no restrictions, then there's no reason you can't just run the exact same one inside of a pod on Kubernetes for your dev environments. Doesn't cost anything, and it'll be quicker. Spinning up an RDS instance is not quick. It's not quick at all. It can take 10, 15 minutes to spin that up. That's pretty much unacceptable. Yeah, but that might cost money, Ninja. It might cost too much money for them. They might be looking at it from like a CI perspective and going, I just want to spin it up, run a load of behavior-driven tests, integration tests, and I want it to go away again. Whereas RDS can, you're right, you can just keep it up, but it's going to be expensive, and so I guess Jexel would need to sort of elaborate on sort of budgets and financials. He might work for friggin' Apple, and they throw $1 billion at the database stuff. And it's like, cost isn't an issue, in which case, yeah, just spin up the exact same RDS instance. But then he might work for a small startup that's running on fumes and be like, we need to minimize these costs. In which case, I'd probably say run the Postgres locally on your desktop and do your tests there, or inside of a CI pipeline, inside of a Docker container, or inside of a K8 cluster that already exists. It's already costing you X amount of money already, and just do it that way. But experience has shown me a hard time doing very similar things to what Jex was proposing, so I might have good amount of PTSD. Okay, this is all for a personal project for resume, so it's a matter of as cheap as possible. It seems that running Postgres and K8 is the best option in this case. I would say because you don't care about the data, and as long as you're if you're using very basic features within the engine, you're not using stuff that's tightly binding you to that engine, you'll be fine in K8s. I would just essentially look at the actual engine. So RDS for Postgres. There'll be gotchas. There will be gotchas here. So it supports 9.6, 10, 11, and 12. So let's see if backup and recovery, high availability, blah, blah, featured customers, view RDS Postgres customers, check out the product details. Okay, pre-configure fast, predictable storage. I'm just interested to see if it actually supported, there we go. So supported Postgres features, PostGIS, full text search dictionaries, HStore JSON data types, stat statements, foreign data wrappers, core Postgres engine features. For detailed list of the core engine features, please refer here. So now we can immediately see what is and is not supported. So as you can see, there is a huge list in this feature matrix that it is supported and is not supported. So here's the actual Postgres feature list. And I would imagine that all of these are probably supported in RDS. I think. Oh, I see. Yeah, I see. So I assume that they're all supported in RDS. So it says it supports core Postgres engine features. So I don't see where backend functions, operators. Well, what constitutes a core feature? Are these table elements features added in each version? Well, I guess these are the core features then. So it supports up to, what did it say it went up to again? Was it 12? I believe it went at 12, right? Okay. So we can't do 14, 13. We can do, let's say we want to use the latest. Let's get rid of 11. And that's introduced 9.6 actually. So obviously there's so here straight away. So Mac ADR 8 data type, that isn't available in, oh, there we go. Sorry. So that isn't available in 9.6, but is available in 12. So that's obviously an example of going from one version to the other, but that's just the Postgres version. If you're running 12 in RDS, this is the features that you have access to. Because I assume that these are the core engine features. So this is obviously what is and isn't supported in Postgres. So you basically just keep them. Aligned. Keep the versions aligned, and you'll be fine. Let's have a look, Elena. How do I know how many pods I should run based on my node resources? Would you guys recommend having a resource limit on the pods? Would you recommend having a resource limit on the pods? I have a pod autoscaler, so I suppose this will choose the optimized number of pods running based on resources available, also based on your min and max range. What would you guys recommend for smoother scaling process? Ninja immediately in there with, you should definitely have limits on your pods, and I agree. Otherwise your pods can go absolutely mental and just KO everything, and that is never a good thing. Let's have a look over here. Let's have a look. You should definitely monitoring. How many people? Yeah, monitoring. Lots of monitoring and alerting, and Kleenex for when you cry. Monitoring and load testing, the only way you can to know. Yeah, so right sizing. So it's essentially right sizing is what is being referred to there. Right sizing is when you load up an application, you sort of give it minimal constraint, you give it sort of minimal amount of resources, and then you execute against that and you stress test it. And then as you stress test it, you see it sort of hitting the walls of the pod, if you like, to use an analogy. And it's very quickly bottles and throttles itself, and you get a bottleneck, and your connections per second might be 10. So then you increase those pod. You change the pod spec to have more resources, and then you see it go from 10 connections to 100 connections. And then you sort of go, well, we want to be able to handle based on monitoring information, based on stuff that we know in the back, like predictable loads and things like that. Yeah, DevOps Pro Dude says, unless you've built hundreds of X and X has predictable loads. So if you have predictable loads, then you can go, well, we know for a fact that 24/7 we get 1,000 connections per second. So then you would right size the pods to be able to handle, say, 1,500 to 2,000 per second, just in case there's a slight burst, maybe something goes viral. It depends on the product, depends on the service. And then once you've right sized them, then you can wrap those pods around in a nice little set of restrictions in order to make it so that they can't go overboard. There's a cascade failure issue you have to be aware of. You need to benchmark all of your components involved, even still monitoring. If you can't see what's going on, you can't even start your OODA loop. You also have to know what your bounds are. It's about migrate. First of all, collect and monitoring data on all the infrastructure. Well, not all workloads are the same, but you should have an idea of what you should be monitoring first. Yeah, I agree. There's a lot there, Elena. There's a lot to sort of know. You've got to know a lot about your application, your customer base, the type of people you're serving, when you're serving them, times of day, because you could be based in New York, but your customers might be in Germany. Who knows? I've got a guy, I know, a friend here he sells school books. He has books for teaching GCSEs, as they're called, over in the UK, and he immigrated into Australia, and he still runs that business overseas. So, like for him, for example, to spin a new service up, he's going to be working with the UK market in the Australian time zone, so he has to be aware of that, and he has to compensate for that accordingly. So that's a lot. You may not care about I/O, but you should know what your app cares about. But Ninja is a good resource, seriously. He is I would say he is a resource. That's all Ninja is. It's just a resource to be consumed. He's not a person, he's a resource. It's a robot! What else was I looking at? Boom, Ninja that up. All right. So we were looking at that. Where are we? Amazon Postgres. Yeah, okay, let's switch on over. We're going to skip Azure because no one uses it. Haha, just kidding. Because we're sort of going thingy on time here. So let's have a look. So I found this Project M. Let's have a sound of interest. Project M, the most advanced open source music visualizer. Experience psychedelic and mesmerizing visuals by transforming music into equations that render its limitless array of user-contributed visuals. Whoa, that sounds good. Okay, available for Windows Standalone. Maybe that's whoa. All right. I'm gonna need my headphones. 1 second. All right, let's have a look what this is about. There we go. Put the old bows on. Cool. Not sure how loud that is for you guys. It's pretty loud for me. All right, let's see what we get here. Wow. That's pretty nuts. Nice. That's really cool. God, talk about psychedelic, Jesus. That reminds me of the Windows logo. We're going to get a copyright strike on my channel now for the friggin' music. What? That is mental. It's like a sun exploding into a black hole. Reminds me of Winamp. I'm not posting a link, dude. What do you think I am? Just like your personal Google. Yeah, of course I can post a link. All right, let's come off that. There you go. Project M. It actually mentions Winamp. It actually says that it's sort of like inspired by Winamp. Wow, really cool. Okay, screenshots. That is nuts. Whoa. Alrighty. Damn. Let's take these headphones off because I'm going to start shouting because I can't hear myself. That is pretty crazy. Very, very cool. SubLive. Online live rooms with super fast sound. We are pioneering a new way of making music by connecting musicians all over the world with low latency and high quality audio network. Very cool. Okay, that's what I need. Just a desktop computer with an internet connection. Very easy to download. Create a room. Invite your friends. How we did it. So this is essentially 1,000 kilometers in 17 milliseconds. Denmark to London. Wow, Denmark to London is 1,000 kilometers? Yeah, I guess it would be, wouldn't it? Within the same city, latency can be less than 4 milliseconds and 10 milliseconds between cities. We've been able to achieve sub 20 millisecond latency from the UK to Denmark, more than 1,000 kilometers. That's really cool. So that's going to allow musicians to sort of like jam it out over the internet very, very easily. That's really cool. Elena's still typing, which is totally fine. Go ahead, Elena. Just wondering if anyone else has any questions about anything or do you want to look at something? Do you have any cool links? User feedback. That's psychedelic. Look, it's that other thing's come back again. Very cool. Now, what was this again? DDoS attacks hit multiple email providers. Oh, yeah, that's right. So a couple of Fastmail is one of the ones, the privacy first email provider based in Australia. You can't have privacy first and be in Australia. That's utterly ridiculous. We've received threatening letters and a demand for money. We will not pay the amount of money demanded. Companies must not allow themselves to be blackmailed by criminals under any circumstances. Otherwise, they will become even more attractive to them. Otherwise, they will become even more attractive to them. A DDoS attack often are not stopped, even if the money has been paid. Yeah. Well, that's sad to see that that's still a thing. I mean, I know it's still a thing, but it's just sad to see people just extraditing, you know, what's it called? Blackmailing people and just extracting money from them by taking down businesses. It's a shame. Let's have a look. Parsing gigabytes of JSON. Oh, I didn't realize that this was actually a paper. Okay. Yeah, I'm not good over that. I thought it'd be a cool blog post. This one was an interesting one. Ask Hacker News. Best way to host a website for 500 years. Say you wanted to host a personal page that can outlive you and be seen by the children of your grandchildren. Other than asking your progeny, I can't say that word, to keep paying the hosting bills, is there another way? How would you approach this? How would you go about hosting a website effectively for 500 years? Carve the HTML into a tree. Some of the responses were kind of interesting. But this one, I like this one. The World Wide Web is only 28 years old. We've had computers for 76 years at this point. We're discussing this topic in modern English. But if you look back 500 years, William Shakespeare wouldn't be born for another couple of generations. Vocabulary and grammar have changed a lot since then. And if you look back a further 500 years, the English spoken in those days was a lot closer to Frisian than anything we'd understand. To get the big picture of what 500 years means, the oldest surviving writing is roughly 5,500 years old. We've had agriculture for 11,000 years, and you're asking for a personal legacy to be legible and usable after surviving a span of 10% as vast as the existence of writing itself. Okay, fair enough. Think archival grade materials and ink, then add translations into Mandarin, Arabic, and Spanish. There's a much better chance of it being readable if you have more than one language. Then maybe add a dictionary, just in case words have fallen out of use. Make multiple copies and distribute them around the world, including tectonically stable regions that are currently lightly or uninhabited and likely to remain so. The criteria for deep disposal nuclear waste repositories are applicable minus the deep bit. So Yucca Flats would do, or the Atacama Desert, or the McMurdo dry valleys in Antarctica. quite an interesting approach, quite an interesting response. Yeah, how would you go about that? I mean, I guess technically that's sort of what IPFS, the interplanetary file system, is attempting to sort of do, I guess. Sort of make it timeless and limitless and uncensorable and sort of never ending, I guess. But then in 500 years, you can't really guarantee the internet's even going to be a thing. You can't even guarantee we're going to be a thing in 500 years, let alone frigging your personal website, and let alone IPFS. Hashit Jan in the YouTube live there says, hello, welcome to the stream, buddy. Going to be ending in about 5 minutes, but we can continue on. If you have any questions at all, feel free to ask, or head on over to the chat.learndevops.com.au if you want to continue the chat afterwards. Let's have a look. Elena, as I understand, implement Prometheus, see how much one instance pod requires of resource on average with Prometheus, set a resource limit of those pods. Sorry if I'm asking bad questions. Okay. And he says, that is very rudimentary, but would be the very beginnings of getting started. You should use Grafana to visualize the metrics you are capturing. Yeah, that's very basic. Alana, it's definitely in the right path. You're definitely, is it Elena or Elena? It's definitely on the right path. Yeah, you're definitely starting to monitor things, looking at metrics, sort of getting an idea of what your application can handle, what it can't handle, and then that will enable you to essentially try and right size it on very basic metrics, but you're going to have to keep going on that and keep building on it and keep understanding what else is required, disk throughput, database read writes. That's why microservice architectures are actually a thing, because you may have a monolithic application, and then what tends to happen is a certain part of it gets a lot of attention, and so that gets broken out into a microservice so that can be right-sized and scaled individually in its own right, because that might be using lots and lots of database writes or reads, and so you then break it out. And what you can then do as well in a sort of true, whatever that means, microservice architecture, is the microservice itself is then broken out of the monolith, and it gets its own database, and then you communicate directly through the microservices in order to talk to that backend database. It's taken away from the main one, and then again, that can be scaled vertically and horizontally as an individual sort of element. And so that's where, much further down, that's where sort of right sizing and actual scaling comes into it, into the more really advanced realms. Ninja says, this is what I have used as a reference. Let's have a look. Overview. This is a short section, most useful popular material, documentation, prep examples. So, okay, so prep events, one-liners, that's performance events, Linux enhanced BFP tools for performance analytics. Yeah, wow, okay, this is quite a list. Is there anything in particular on here, Ninja? If you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty details of benchmark, load testing, observability, right, okay. So this is just overall sort of like observing everything. Another good person to follow is Charity Major, I think her name is, Charity Majors. She refers to herself as she, I think. Charity is exceptionally good and runs a company that pretty much focuses on observability. Charity's really, really good. So she might be someone to monitor on the old Twitters there. I think she's got a couple of books as well. Her blog's really good. Yeah, charity.wtf. She's really good as well. She's got some good stuff. Why I hate the phrase breaking down silos. I'm going to have to give that a read, because that's something that I think is a good phrase, but I'm happy to read that. But yeah, she's pretty good as well. So I think this company of hers, Honeycomb, I think is an observability. Yeah, observability for distributed world, designed for engineers to debug platforms, microservices, serverless applications, and enable collaborative problem solving. Honeycomb observability. So this is her organization, her company. I believe it's doing pretty well. But she's written books on this, and she's very good at it. So that might be something that's helpful, Elena. Guess less, know more. Interesting. Yes, excellent. I wonder what its product overview, use cases. I wonder what its pricing is like. Start with a free plan. Okay. So free, distributed tracing, bubble up, quickly find outliers and the likely factors behind why they are occurring. Let's have a look. Hashit John in the YouTube live says, sometimes tech is quite overwhelming. How should an individual handle it? Well, it depends what you mean. Which aspect of it is overwhelming for you? Yeah, are you trying to, what is it you currently do? Are you in DevOps? Are you in something else? What part of tech is overwhelming? Do you mean the sheer number of available technologies? Because you're right, yeah, it is. It can be. There are a lot of technologies, a lot of kinds of chaos engineering, observability, DevOps, CloudOps, agile sprints. There's just so many phrases and things and ways of operating that it can definitely be quite overwhelming. So yeah, no, I totally understand where you're coming from there, but you might have to just shrink down the scope a little bit there for me to understand what it is you're referring to. Did I have anything else? Oh, we had the Vitus thing. Yeah, I thought that this was the last thing I wanted to look at because I just thought that was such an interesting question. And some of the answers are pretty good. Let's have a look. Keeping servers up. Technology will shift, such as eventually HTML web pages. Servers that talk using TCP IP, data centers that connect via fiber cables, etc. will all be deprecated. Interesting. Deprecated for what? Exactly. I like to just look at the top ones. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculpture well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things. The hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my words, ye mighty and despair. Nothing besides remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Still doesn't help me get my website running for 500 years, though. Go to a big legal firm that's been around for at least a few hundred years. With them, set up a trust with a certificate endowment to run indefinitely, barring total social and economic collapse, with the mission of maintaining the specific website in accessible format. It will be expensive, but this general structure is already used by various organizations with one mission or yeah. I think that's true. It's I've realized, sorry, I'm not on, I can't actually see what I'm going on about here. I think that's really true about the going to a law firm. Setting up a trust is the best way to do this. It probably is, yeah. You couldn't trust one firm. Many firms in many countries, or even better, diversify and use multiple different plans, not just lawyers. How expensive do you think this would be? It would be fun to estimate the total cost over 500 years. I reckon it'd be millions upon millions. Cost of administration of the trust, paying someone to maintain a website would be far higher than the hosting costs. Yeah, I think so. Jigsaw, what have you got here? For some reason, Kubernetes Stack's Prometheus node exporter is failing to run on my second node on EKS cluster. I created a third node, but now it still won't run on another. I can't find anything on the docs. Any ideas? Check the logs of the pod, the node exporter in a dataset, but still requires CPU mem, but the logs will tell you. I also do describe on the pod. Interesting bit of debugging going on here. All right. Well, CodeBit, you just popped in. Welcome, but you're late because I'm now leaving. So I hope that's been helpful. We did a little bit of cloud news there. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. We did a bit of a chat there on Kubernetes, which I actually thought was pretty cool. Thanks everyone who was involved in that. It's still going, as you can see. We've now gotten to the nitty-gritty of debugging a Kubernetes. Too many pods. 2 pods didn't match the pod's name. Affinity selector right there. Oh no. Well, there's your problem. You didn't label a node, or you didn't set the affinity on the pod. Oh, amateur mistake. Okay, everyone. Thanks for showing up today. Wednesday will be the next stream, the same time. The time doesn't change. It's always the same time. It was 11:30 AEST. You're welcome to stay in the chat and keep going if you want to. Pop over to the casual chat if you want to actually talk to each other. You can stay in the questions. It's entirely up to you. Thanks for everyone who showed up. Really, really appreciate your time today. hopefully that's been useful. Hopefully that's been helpful. I do appreciate everyone for coming on. If anyone has any questions afterwards, I'm pretty much always on the Discord, always available for questions. So thanks very much. Peace, everyone. Peace.
Very nice.